Me on speaker will test, we are testing. Can you say something?
He has to mute his screen.
Can you mute your screen? He muted his screen. Can you say something?
Yeah, now can you guys hear me in the room?
It's going to be echo. It did? I don't know why it's echoing.
Ramaya Rama Bhagavaya Namaha.
I think it's
Was
going to
it?
be. That one is. You want me to mute this?
How
Yes, please. Man, I cannot hear the sound.
Sitaram.
Thank you all for coming to the event. Before we start the event, I wanted to kind of introduce Akshayam to everyone who may not know. So Akshayam is a team of young professionals, mainly based in New York and New Jersey area, with a shared interest of exploring our Hindu identity. The term Akshayam breaks down in Sanskrit as Akshay, which means unending or eternal. In light of this, the purpose of Akshayam is to give back to our community through seva, and to see our Ganesha temple grow and foster our culture for generations to come. Monthly, Akshayam hosts a learning series where guest speakers present interesting topics such as the purpose of rituals in Sanatana Dharma, to who is a from rituals in Sanatana Dharma to who is a Hindu, and everything in between. Our upcoming learning series, number 60, will be hosted on September the 9th at 1 p.m., wherein we will discuss the significance of Shravana and Bhadrapada months. We hope that you can join us there. It'll be online, and we'll have a link for you to join. Our team organizes cultural and volunteer-based and educational events at the temple. In the past, we have helped out with classes for the younger students in the Ganesha Pathashala, helping at local soup kitchens, volunteering in the temple canteen on weekends, attending interfaith meetings in the community, and giving tours of our temple to visitors and other things. In the coming months, we hope to reignite these seva traditions, continue to explore Hindu identity, and give back to our temple. Please follow us on NY Ganesha Temple website or our social media platforms, which is at NY Ganesha Temple. To keep up with events that Akshayam puts on. Yes, and so now I'll sort of introduce the theme of the event. So the theme of the event is embracing ethical values, exploring the timeless lessons on of the Ramayana in the contemporary world. So a brief introduction to what the Ramayana is. The Ramayana is a timeless epic revered across cultures. It stands as a profound source of moral and ethical guidance. Its narratives and cultures continue to resonate deeply, offering invaluable insights into righteousness and duty that are remarkably applicable in the contemporary world. The epic's teachings transcend time, presenting us with a mirror to reflect upon our actions, choices, and values. Through the exemplary life of Lord Rama, the Ramayana imparts a fundamental lesson on the unwavering commitment to principles, even when faced with adversity. Rama's adherence to righteousness, his duty as a prince and later as a husband, and his unyielding stand for justice against all odds highlight the significance of upholding ethical standards regardless of the circumstances. The epic underscores the importance of relationships, revealing the profound impact of loyalty, compassion, and mutual support in face of challenges. Lord Rama's unflinching devotion to his beloved wife Sita, his unwavering bond with his devoted brother Lakshmana, and his alliances formed in his quest to rescue Sita all underscore the vital role of steadfast relationships in navigating these complexities of life.
In the backdrop of our modern, technologically advanced, yet often divided world, the Ramayana emerges as a guiding light. Its timeless wisdom calls for a renewed understanding of empathy and unity. The epic's teachings transcend religious boundaries, advocating for compassion and understanding amidst diversity. The Ramayana serves as a potent reminder that the principles of empathy and respect are not confined by time or creed, but are universally applicable for healing the fractures of society. As we gather here today, we are privileged to be in the company of esteemed speakers who possess profound expertise in Hinduism and the teachings of the Ramayana. Their insights will undoubtedly enrich our understanding of the epic's moral fabric, helping us apply its ageless wisdom to the contemporary challenges we face. Now we'll introduce the speakers. speakers that we have today. First, we have Shri Vishwa P. Aturi. Um, up on stage. Please join us on stage. Shri Vishwa P. Adluri is a professor in the philosophy department at Hunter College, New York, and the author of over a dozen articles and essays on the Mahabharata. His work mainly focuses on the reception of ancient thought, both Greek and Indian, in modernity. He is the author of Parmenides, Plato and Mortal Philosophy, Return from Transcendence, The May Science, A History of German Indology, and Philology and Criticism, A Guide to Mahabharata Textual Criticism, and has edited numerous volumes on the Mahabharata, including Argument and Design, The Unity of the Mahabharata. Sri Vishwa has a PhD in philosophy from the New School for Social Research in New York, a PhD in Indology from Phillips University, Marburg, and a PhD in Sanskrit from Deccan College, Pune. Please welcome him. Our next speaker we have joining online, Sri Krishnan Ramaswamy. Um, He's online. Okay. Sri Krishnan Ramaswamy is a lifelong student of Bhakti literature and was introduced to his first love, the Ramayana, by his grandmother. He and his wife are students of Vedanta and studied the Upanishad and Srimad Bhagavad Gita and Brahma Sutras under Puja Swami Dayananda Saraswati, culminating in a course of study in traditional Gurukulam for 3 years. Meeting Swamiji was the greatest event in his life. Pujya Swamiji's teaching of the Ramayana, as well as exposure to the traditional commentaries through the great scholars Swengalipuram Anantarama Dikshitar and his student Sri Sundara Kumarji, have kept the love of Ramayana alive in his life. He's the author of 2 books on Hindu culture and is working on retelling of the Ramayana. He works as a scientist in the pharmaceutical industry, primarily in the area of prostate and breast cancer research. Let's please welcome Sri Krishnan Swami. And finally, we have Srimati Aditi Banerjee. Let's please invite her to stage. Srimati Aditi Banerjee is an attorney at a Fortune 500 financial services company and an author. She has authored and published 3 books, The Curse of Gandhari, The Vow of Parvati, and Hindu Love Stories. She is a frequent speaker on topics related to Hinduism and the Hindu American experience. She graduated from Yale Law School and obtained her executive MBA from Columbia University. Let's please welcome her. Without further ado, let's give it to the speakers. Thank you.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? I would like to begin by thanking Akshayam Group and all of you at this temple for welcoming me so warmly so I could present my thoughts on Ramayana to you. It is not a small task. There are so many commentators on so many Ramayanas, Valmiki Ramayana being the main one. In the I only wanted to talk about this to you because I was told that the audience would be the younger generation. So that gave me some courage and some Yeah, much needed courage to speak. May the adults in the room who know the text much better than I do forgive me. Let me begin with a prayer and then we will start. I pray to my Guru and to all the Gurus. जन्माद्यस्य यतोऽन्वयाधितरतश्चार्थेष्वभिज्ञस्वराट् तेने ब्रह्महृदायादिकवये यन्ति यः सूरयः तेजो वारिमृतां यथा विनिमयो यत्र त्रिसर्गो मृषा धाम्ना स्वेन सदा निरस्तकुहकं सत्यं परं धीमहि ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय. So today I will stick to, yes. So today I will begin with Ramayana, and the agenda for the day is that I will say a few words about Hindu Dharma first, and give you a brief outline of what texts constitute our Dharma. And then I will go on to talking about the Ramayana structure and finally the conclusion. In this structure of Ramayana itself, certain dharma lessons are encoded. So, of course, we all know that Rama is the personification of dharma. Ramo Vigrahavan Dharma. But even the Kavya, as Valmiki Maharshi has composed, has as its grid a dharmic architecture. So let us focus on that. What is Hindu Dharma? I will give you two small Shubhashitas. The first one being, slide please. The first one being, listen to all Dharma, Yatam, all Dharmas, and having heard it, deliberate on it. Do not do unto others what is disagreeable to you. This is a much more radical definition of dharma because usually we are told, do unto others as you want others to do to you. Here, you have to do what is good, even if the others treat you differently. The expectation of others is not your guide. The scripture is your guide for dharma. The second definition is what is stated by crores of volumes. I shall explain with half a stanza. Doing good to others is virtuous, punya, and causing pain to others is sin, papa. Next slide. So, um, Hinduism is not a religion where we have a God who creates a world and then the God rules over the world. Rather, for us, the basic reality is Brahman. It is the Atman or the self of everything that exists. Brahman creates a Jagat in which he acts as Ishvara, also known as Saguna Brahman. The functions of Ishvara are Shrishti, Poshana, and Laya, or creation, sustaining the universe, and resolving the universe. All this occurs in time or kala. Brahman is eternal, but Jagat is subject to time. So you have a distinction between temporal dharmas and eternal dharmas. Also, another word for temporal dharma is pravritti dharma. That was the dharma that guides the universe. Uh, as long as I am a jiva and I am recirculating in this universe, then pravritti dharma will guide me. But of course, I cannot wish to be part of pravritti dharma, but at that point, not a dharma, but nivritti dharma is will become my goal. A word about reincarnation. People think that it is a metaphysical doctrine. It is a doctrine of, specific to Hinduism, etc. But if there is no reincarnation, and you still want to talk about ethics, you're being a hypocrite. Because in this world, you see very wealthy people who are unjust get everything, and those very just get very little. If there is no reincarnation, at least we should have the courage to say we don't care about ethics. But to pretend that you have a religion without reincarnation or an ethics without reincarnation is, in my humble opinion, hypocrisy. Next slide, please. The structure of dharma, as I have shown you, undergirds the whole universe. You have nivritti dharma, which leads to moksha dharma, which is the continual abidance in Brahman. Pravritti dharma is of three types, if you will: cosmic or macrocosmic, microcosmic, and in between, social, mesocosmic. Uh, the function of dharma is to uphold something. So, dhrindharayati dharma, that which upholds a being as what it is, its natural properties, its existence, and so on. But there are other dharmas as well, such as swadharma, my own dharma. And from society's perspective, there is Raja Dharma, Apad Dharma, there is varnashrama dharma, kula dharma, jati dharma, etc. All these are dealt with in greater detail in the Mahabharata, in the Ramayana, in the form of Rama's story. Dharma is given not analytically like in the Mahabharata, but paradigmatically. So you just look at Rama, be moved by Rama's story and Rama's life, and do as Rama does, or at least um, as if Rama were watching. Next. Because of entropy of dharma in time, is that cut away? Shall I move the screen a bit? Because it's cut away. That's nice. Because of entropy of dharma in time, what is this entropy? Dharma kshaya. That happens because of kala or time, dharma declines. This is a very big idea in Hinduism, that dharma declines over time and becomes more materialistic and chaotic. So Krishna tells Arjuna, "O Arjuna, whenever there is a decline in dharma and an increase in adharma, I manifest myself as an avatara." This is the famous Yada Yada Hi Dharmasya, which you all know. Again, Krishna says, for the protection of the pious, the sadhu jana, and for the destruction of the evildoers and establishing virtue, I manifest myself in every age. Dharma samsthapanarthaya. So the two avatars that we are concerned with are the avatar of Sri Ramachandra in Treta Yuga, and in the Dwapara Yuga, his appearance as Sri Krishna Vasudeva. Next slide. Dharma declines over time because in pravritti dharma, dharma exists dynamically, okay, or you can say in a conflict with adharma, right? If there was no adharma, the pravritti cannot function. So in the dharma adharma conflict is taken very seriously in Hinduism, and Hinduism looks at this conflict straight in the face and tries to come up with solutions. It doesn't posit some utopia or some golden age or what have you. It simply presents conflict as conflict, and this is Mahishasura Mardini, who is participating in the Devasura Yuddha. The Devas represent Dharma, Asuras Adharma, and uh, she's the Shakti that is participating in that. Next slide, please. Every avatara is about punishing the evildoers and protecting those who follow dharma. So these two images are meant to bring home the point that it is not, Hinduism is not simply about violence and non-violence. It is about dharma and adharma, and sometimes adharma would uh, require a, a counteraction by a fearsome form of dharma. So next slide, with these thoughts, you can kind of see how Ramayana is a dharma text. It is about the adharma and the terror created by Ravana and other asuras, and the upsetting of the cosmic order by these Rakshasas. And the Ramavatara is meant to eliminate or counteract Ravana. But where does evil arise? How? How does evil come up? Who are these Rakshasas? Who are these Asuras, and why are they Rakshasas? Uh, the answer to that question is given very clearly by Sri Krishna Paramatma in the Bhagavad Gita. So you all must know this already, but let me just read it. It'll take a few minutes. Demonic people, Asuri Jana, do not know when to initiate action and when to desist from action. Theirs is neither purity nor truthfulness. They maintain that this world has no true reality, no foundation, no God, and it is not produced by an interdependence of causes. By what then? By mere desire. Embracing this view, these lost souls of small enlightenment are, with their dreadful actions, capable of destroying this world they seek to hurt. So, 10-headed Ravana is not necessary. Just Krishna is telling you, just our behavior is sufficient to destroy this world. Just a little bit of adharma is sufficient to cause damage. Embracing this desire, which is insatiable, they go about filled with the intoxication of vanity and self-pride, accepting false doctrines in their folly, false doctrines such as aham karta, aham bhokta, ahameva sarvacha. I'm an independent modern person, man. What are you telling me? Okay? And following polluting life rules, subject to worries without measure that end only with their death. They are totally immersed in the indulgence of desires, convinced that this is all there is. So when Rama shows great restraint in his life, you see how Rama is divine, and you see Ravana, and you see why he is a demon. It's very clear. Krishna doesn't stop there. He continues about these demonic people, strangled with hundreds of nooses of expectation, giving in to desire and anger. Demonic people seek to accumulate wealth by wrongful means in order to indulge their desire. This I got today. The craving, that craving, I still have to satisfy. This much I have as of now, but I'll get more riches. I've already killed that enemy, others I still have to kill. I am a master, I enjoy. I'm successful, strong, and happy. I'm a rich man of high family. Who can equal me? I shall sacrifice, I shall make donations, I shall enjoy myself. So do demonic people think in the folly of their ignorance. Confused by too many concerns, covered by a net of delusions, addicted to pleasures of desire, they fall into foul hell, puffed up by their egos, arrogant, drunk with wealth and pride. They offer up sacrifices in name only. See how beautifully these verses describe Ramana. And Krishna is not even talking about Ramana here. So, let's skip the next slide. Yeah. So, this is the kind of dharma conflict with adharma, pravriti dharma and nivriti dharma that Hindu texts seek to teach and codify and also interpret. So, if you look at the Vedic tradition, next slide, we have the 4 Vedas, which are considered Shruti or pure revelation. Where does revelation occur? Revelation occurs in the deep meditation of the greatest rishis. There the Veda shines forth luminously, and they write it down, and we have it today. Vyasa creates the 5th Veda, the Panchama Veda, which is also a Mimamsa text or an interpretive text. The Mahabharata interprets the Vedas and creates what today we call Itihasa Purana or classical Hinduism. And for that, Vyasa Mahamuni is the figurehead. So there are Mahabharata, Ramayana, and the 18 main Puranas belong to the Itihasa Purana tradition. There are many more Puranas, 108. And Christians also wrote 2 Puranas, Krista Purana and Peter Purana, I think, but those are not part of this tradition. Classical Hinduism is characterized by dharma and yoga meant to achieve the 4 goals. There are only 4 goals in life: dharma, artha, kama, and moksha, in that order. First you learn dharma, then you make money doing swadharma, then whatever is through whatever dharma says is all right, and whatever you can afford, you can enjoy within those means. The purpose of the Veda is not to order you to enjoy, but merely give you permission to dharmically enjoy things so that you might focus on moksha, which is the supreme goal. Okay. The main text, no, go back. The main texts for Hindus are the Ramayana and Mahabharata and the Bhagavad Gita. I cannot overemphasize how important the Ramayana is. The Ramayana is the supremely important text for Hindus. It took It has taken India by storm and continues to do so even to this day. As soon as somebody hears the name Rama, their whole being changes. In Kerala, 15 days ago or so, because of the monsoon, they have a masa called Ramayana Masa, during which no undertakings are undertaken. You clean up your house and you read the Ramayana every day. Every day. And to those of you who are young in this class, Christians go to Sunday school and read the text every week. This Swadhyaya, or the study of scripture, is extremely important. And Ramayana is an outstanding text to begin study. So I urge you to make being a Hindu part of your identity of being a Hindu is to read Ramayana, Mahabharata, and Bhagavad Gita, and Bhagavata Purana, if you want. There are many, okay, if you go back on that, besides the Itihasa Purana, there is a philosophical core to Hinduism. At no point is Hinduism simply just blind faith. The philosophical core is in the Prasthanatrayi. Those are the Upanishad from the Veda, Brahma Sutra, and Bhagavad Gita. So notice that Gita now comes as the most popular text and the most philosophical text, because, and Gita is also the, as you know, the summary of all Vedas, so it is scripture for us. Next slide. Valmiki Ramayana is the main Sanskrit composition, but the Rama story seems to have been everywhere all the time, because in the Mahabharata, in the Vanaparvan, in a section called the Markandeya section, the whole of Ramayana is told by Markandeya. It is called Ramopakyana. But Valmiki's Ramayana is a beautiful outburst of poetry. But of course, even Valmiki's Ramayana does not exhaust the poetic value of Ramayana. And for example, you have Tulsidasa's Ramcharitmanas and so on. So this is a wish-fulfilling tree, the the Rama narrative. It keeps, I would like to mention Adhyatma Ramayana, which is a very small Ramayana in the form of a dialogue between Devi Parvati and Maheshwara about Ramayana. It is a more, let's say, philosophical interpretation, dharmic interpretation of Ramayana. Now, structure of the Ramayana. There are 24,000 verses in about 500 chapters, divided into 7 books called Kandas. Balakanda, which talks about Rama's birth up till his marriage to Sita. Ayodhya Kanda begins Rama's exile and Dasharatha's death. Aranyakanda, Rama's life in the forest, Sita's abduction and Rama's search. Kishkinda Kanda, where Rama befriends the Vanaras, Sugriva and Hanuman. Sundarakanda, which is, I think, very beautiful, of Hanuman's leap across the ocean, searching for Sita, finding Sita, and burning down Lanka. Yuddha Kanda, as the name suggests, is the Rama builds the bridge, kills Ravana, and brings back Sita. And finally, Uttarakanda is about Rama's reign, separation from Sita, and the end of Ramavatara. In this talk, I will focus a little bit on Balakanda and a little bit on Uttarakanda. So you might think that Ramayana begins with Dasharatha praying for children. No, 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 no. Actually, Valmiki Ramayana begins with Narada visiting the ashrama of Valmiki. And this picture, let me try to magnify it next, shows the three events. From the right, Narada is approaching and Valmiki is receiving him. To the left, Narada is instructing Valmiki, and on the top right, Narada is flying away after having given that instruction. So it's good to see how Ramayana begins with a certain purpose. Valmiki is not like a modern day artist waiting for inspiration and just doing whatever he wants. He wants a specific subject matter that Narada gives him. So Valmiki asks Narada Muni, who is there in this world who is of good nature, powerful, righteous, alert in action, truthful in speech, firm in resolve, exemplary in conduct, devoted to the welfare of all beings, learned, skillful, with a pleasant presence, self-controlled, with anger overcome, resplendent and free from jealousy, of whom even the gods are afraid when he is angered. So he is asking about an Adipurusha, an ideal Purusha, an Adarsha Purusha as the subject matter for his poetry. You know, people are fond of historicism and say, oh, this was added, that was added. These texts are very carefully crafted. They're carefully preserved. So the historicist method is not even applicable to these texts. Anyway, so Narada gives a long response, but the gist of it is Rama is the equal of Vishnu, so write about Rama. He describes how handsome Rama is, how virtuous Rama is, how good his conduct is, and so on. Narada leaves Valmiki's hermitage and goes away. So you would think now that Valmiki will just say, okay, dude, I will write it up. But no. Valmiki goes to bathe in the Tamasa river where he sees a Nishada, a hunter, kill a male crowncha bird. Crowncha is a crane, and he utters a curse. So let's see. These are crowncha birds. Next slide. They were mating, and then the hunter kills the male one, and the female cries piteously. This introduces a central theme of Ramayana, that along with dharma, karuna rasa, karuna, compassion, this is shot through with Ramayana. Sometimes you're laughing and smiling because the text is so beautiful. Sometimes you're crying because the text is so sad. But your eyes will be wet throughout reading Ramayana. Tears of joy, tears of compassion, they just flow. So Valmiki curses the hunter as follows: O violent hunter, by which reason you have killed one bird of a couple when it was infatuated by passion. For that reason you will never get a state of rest for everlasting years to come. There are many interpretations of this verse, which I'm not going to go into, but towards the end, I think we will see the significance of this. Valmiki then turns to Bharadwaja, his disciple. Look at this. Narada teaches Valmiki. Valmiki now teaches Bharadwaja. Look at the pedagogical Guru Shishya parampara over which Dharma is being unfolded. So Valmiki tells his student, while I was tormented by grief, shoka, there arose in me a poetic meter, shloka. So Ramayana's poetry is firmly in grip of what it means to produce artistically. Poetry can turn death and grief into something beautiful and elevating. Now you would think that he will just sit and write and compose the poetry. No. Brahma appears to Valmiki. What is the function of Brahma? To create the universe. He's appeared here as to make sure that Valmiki creates a poetic universe, an art world, if you will, right? Preparing. So Brahma appears to Valmiki and tells him to write about the adventures of Rama and gives him a kind of vision by which all of Ramayana is available to Valmiki in his mind's eye. He simply has to write it. Okay? This is the difference between poetry and history. In history, you were not there, right? Neither you saw, it's hearsay. But here, the poet sees and composes. Exactly. Therefore, Hinduism has disregarded historical paradigms for teaching dharma as insufficient for describing the human condition. It has instead taken the form of Itihasa Purana. And for those who understand Itihasa Purana, reading a book on history becomes problematic. It's like, what is the pramana here? Is it sense perception? Is it inference? What is this, right? History itself becomes a bad poetry as opposed to good poetry. So Valmiki sees the entire Ramayana with his mind's eye, and now you would think he would sit down and write the story. No, he says, I've composed it, but who should I tell it to? And guess who walks in? Lava and Kusha, who are the sons of Rama, whose life he has just seen. Next slide, there. He tells the story to Lava and Kusha, and Lava and Kusha go to Ayodhya and tell it to Rama, and that is the version we are getting. These are some poetic high jumps here, acrobatics here. This is more than Marcel Proust can hope for. So let us recapitulate. The first six kandas, the first six kandas, I'm studying the Bhagavata Purana with my guru and skanda comes up to my mind, but that's not it. Kandas. The first six kandas of the Ramayana are narrated by the sons of Rama and their audience is Rama. Imagine your sons telling you your story. The loop of pravritti, right? Putro vayatmana jayate. If you accept that your son is your atma reborn, then it is atma katha. Atma katha. Beautiful. Rama himself was First, Valmiki's longing, poetic longing for an ideal hero for his poetry. Narada had suggested Rama. The hunter's cruelty gave him the meter for the verse to compose. Brahma gives him the vision of Rama's life, and Valmiki composes 24,000 verses, teaches it to Lava and Kusha. They learn, go to Ayodhya, and give that to Rama. Now the Uttarakanda. The first 6 books, we know how they are. The Uttarakanda makes some readers uncomfortable. Sita has already demonstrated her purity in Lanka, in the Agni Pariksha, but then Rama sends her away. Some people feel that this is unnecessary, and it's also sad, right? We samsarins, what do we want? Happy endings. We do not want this kind of a separation at death, but that's what happens to all of us, right? This is one of the beautiful things about Christian ceremony. When someone gets married, they'll say, until death do part, right? That is true. I accept that part of it. Okay. Then Kamban removes this episode from his Ramayana. Since the other 6 kandas are narrated by Lava and Kusha, the Uttarakanda appears to be a prakshipta, something added or taken. Rama acts as if he does not know he is Vishnu, and only the final chapters reveal that he is Vishnu. So the whole thing appears like an afterthought. Perhaps Rama was just a good king who was elevated to being a god. All these can be answered simply by paying attention to Lava and Kusha. If Rama had not sent Sita away, Lava and Kusha would not have been informed or taught Ramayana. If they had not learned Ramayana and spoken it back, we would not have had the Ramayana at all. Sita's going away. She's serving a very important purpose. A man wants a son to carry on to inherit his house, family, wealth, name, etc. Sita is giving a lot more. She has turned Rama's life into Ramayana. Amazing lady. An amazing lady. In the end, Brahma sends a messenger to inform Rama to wrap up his incarnation. Lakshmana gives up his life to protect the citizens of Ayodhya from being destroyed by a curse. Brahma thus guides the entire story. He plays an important role in the Uttarakanda as he did in the Balakanda. So Uttarakanda is not just an afterthought. Now people say Rama sent away Sita to, anyone? Where did he send her away to? Forest. Where did that come from? He sends her to Valmiki's ashrama. He does not just throw her to the tigers. Very important. Yes, he does. No. He sends her to, he tells Lakshmana, take her to where the ashrama of Valmiki is, in Valmiki Ramayana. Yeah, he just does not abandon her in the woods. So, let us look at Rama from Sita's perspective, okay? Not Rama from Sita's perspective, Sita from Rama's or patriarchal or even a feminist perspective. Let's look at what Sita is seeing. Rama knew happiness only in the forest with Sita, far away from Ayodhya. Ayodhya was always testing Rama, sending him away first, then gossiping about Sita. And here is why Rama sent Sita to Valmiki. This is the gossip, okay? This is the Twitter people of Ayodhya talking and trying to cancel Sita. What must be the pleasure in Rama's heart born out of conjugation with Sri Sita? Why does Sri Rama not censure her, who had formerly been forcibly carried away by Ravana, placing her in his lap and even taken to Lanka? You see how gossip grows wings, right? As if these people in Ayodhya saw Sita sitting in Ravana's lap. This is how ordinary people become asuras. This is how ordinary people, by spreading gossip, doing ninda, blaming the blameless, become rakshasas, or even worse. Such conduct of our wives shall be suffered by us also, poor men of Ayodhya, since whatever a king does, the subjects will follow. Please note, Rama did not send Sita away to the forest and discard her there. Only in the author's protection, the author's omniscient protection, could Sita be free from blame. The world would always talk about her, gossip about her. Only in that ashrama would she be safe. Valmiki is always protecting Rama through his story, Sita by sheltering her, and Lava and Kusha by teaching them. Similarly, may the author of the universe, Narayana, protect us. Sita from Rama's perspective. And Sita always parted from Rama by external forces. Poor Rama is always running. Sita, he goes to the forest for a little bit, but she's carried away. And he goes searching for her. So, and then she's taken away from him by Ravana first, and then permanently taken away from him by the public. It is the public. It is the gossiping public, right? Not Rama out of his own fancy. And how does Valmiki portray Rama when Sita is gone? Propping himself on a wooden stick, his eyes afflicted with tears, head downcast in mental agony. Rama was indeed very much aggrieved, weeping long and shedding tears in profusion, possessed of anger and sorrow. He said, "A sorrow never experienced before is about to overpower my mind," as Sita, the goddess of wealth incarnate, disappeared just before my eyes. A sorrow never experienced before. O goddess earth, return Sita or grant me space in you for me. I shall stay with her in the underworld. Bring back that Sita. I have gone mad for her. If you will not give me back Sita as she was on this earth, I shall put you to ruin with the mountains and forests ruined entirely. I shall destroy this whole earth. That is how Valmiki is presenting Rama. So, in the Krauncha bird episode, it is the female who's crying. In the Ramayana, Valmiki's Karuna Rasa has gone to make Rama cry when Sita is gone. Okay? Maybe. Just think about it. I may be wrong, because whenever you speak beyond the acharyas and what is not in the traditional commentaries, you have to be careful. Unless you're an academic, then you can say whatever you want. Instead of seeing Sita from a feminist perspective, we reversed this perspective and showed Rama from Sita's perspective. Before Valmiki set out to write the poem, it was a male crane killed and a female crane screaming with grief. Through Ramayana, Vyasa reverses the perspective. The female Sita has gone, Rama weeps pitifully. The logic of our interpretation here is based on the text itself. Then Brahma consoles and Rama's reign is finished. He's no longer the king. He's no longer the protector of earth, but simply a broken-hearted boy, now old, leaning on a stick, crying for his Sita. But thanks to Ravana and uncultured people who gossip and blame, it is too late for Rama. In this scene, the hunter's presence is poetically echoed. The hunter is violence, ignorance, and greed. Filled with grief, we are turned back to the beginning of the story to read the story full of karuna in our heart. The purpose of poetry is to uplift and purify us, as Ramayana does so eloquently. One final word. Do I have another slide on that one? No? Okay. Pauropavada. Pauropavada is given as the reason for Rama sending Sita away. Paura means of the Puri or Pura, means the city. I have it? Yeah, sorry. So, Paurapavada means public gossip. Ninda, apavada here means ninda. Right? So today, even today, you see how Rama is reviled. Not Sita, but Rama is reviled. But the problem is neither Rama nor Sita. The problem is Paurapavada. That is the problem. And when people do that to other cultures and humiliate other people's religions and ways of worship, right? That is violence. And Ramayana shows the cost of that. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Thank you for your patience. Did I take up too much time? It's the great tradition of Hindu speakers. They keep on talking. But hopefully I said something good.
Thank you so much for that wonderful talk. We're having some technical difficulties with the online speakers. So what we'll do now is, if you want some coffee or tea, we'll have a small break. Oh, upma, okay. Yeah, 10 minutes, yeah.
You don't?
No.
Okay. So that's a bit of a problem. If I try to share my camera, the screen goes off.
Okay, then it's very. Let's just do the presentation.
Okay. How about now? Are you able to see anything?
No, we are only able to see nothing.
By the way, the YouTube broadcast is still running, so all of this is coming up on YouTube.
Okay, one second.
All I thought.
Yeah, I use. Yeah. Now we could see it. Now we could see it.
You can see? Okay. Good.
Yeah. If you can do the full screen, oh, perfect. That's it. Ready to go.
Okay. Very good.
Can you speak?
Yeah. Can you hear me clearly? Ramaya Ramabhadraya Ramachandraya Vedase Raghunathaya Nathaya Sitaya Pataye Namaha. Are you able to see? Yeah? Hello? Karthik, are you able to hear me?
Yeah. We are checking the voice one more time. Sheila has
But here, for example, it's a beautiful piece of character art that I remember from my childhood. And it depicts a scene in which when Rama and Sita were in the forest, one day Sita's Sindhura on a hot day, all the exertion was washed away by her sweat. So Rama finds a bed from a rock that has been split, and he adorns her forehead. And the book is full of moments, but that's not what we're going to look at. How brilliant text with humans and with the challenge all throughout life. Okay. Firstly, look at Bharatandam and Yogyakan from the perspective of confronting stuff. One of the first things that emerges is that in this case, there is no safe space whatsoever. Karthik, I'm still getting a lot of reverberation. I don't have any speakers on. I don't have any speakers on here. All my microphones are down, so I'm not sure why there's so much feedback.
Hold on one second.
Is it possible to just do it over the screen space? Is there
I didn't change anything. But he's getting a lot of feedback. He's getting a feedback on his end.
I'm getting text from people saying they're getting feedback as well.
Okay, you wanna continue?
Okay. Okay. So one first thing that we have to accept is that the Ramayana is not a fairy tale. There is no such thing as an happy after. That is not the purpose of the poem. The purpose of the poem is to explore in a great deal and with some unflinching reality. So one of the first things that you the Balakandam and Ayodhya Kandam, there are no space stations. There is one, there is the river. But that is not till you go through the suffering. And the next issue is the virtue of facing versus avoiding. Then the Ramayana shows you how to keep the thought, how to betray hurt, how some understand what is to be done, and others do not understand that, and how to be done. I think it's possible for us to try through this screen itself rather than try to.
Yeah, we could hear you. But the thing is, there is some feedback coming in. Tech issues are just, can you talk to StreamYard? Can you talk to StreamYard?
So shall we try through StreamYard and leave this aside?
Yeah, that's what. Yeah, can you try it through StreamYard? Sorry again.
Okay. So I'll turn the phone off. Okay. So can you guys hear me now? Hello? Can you guys hear me? Okay. So in the Balakandam, we have a beautiful depiction of a family
Sorry
that
about
is
the
thriving.
technical difficulties and apologize.
Are you able to
Even
hear me?
this even this day of tech, we still have issues. So long way to go.
Are you still able to hear me? Hello? So the Balakandam depicts a flourishing family and a thriving people. There are gorgeous verses there that talk about how happy everything is. After great effort, the king and the queens have these four beautiful children born to them. And you would think that given all the struggles that they went through, then you would see a chance for a happy ending right here. However, that's not what happens, right? Something very, very ordinary, something very, very routine is going to happen that is also shocking and that is also going to turn everything in a different direction. Vishwamitra shows up at the court, and here's a depiction from the 20th century from a Marathi printer. And all the people are dressed in the costume maybe of the 19th century in Maharashtra. But the idea is that Vishwamitra has come seeking the help of the king, and he says that he has to take the son to the king away. We will look at these verses in some detail in just a few minutes. And the only thing he wants from the king is Rama and Lakshmana. So this is the first Vanavasa, the first loss that the epic records. But in some ways, this is the human journey, and it's every hero's first journey, right? We all have to go from the laps of mother and father into the world. We all have to be trained and mentored, and then we all have to be thrown in and tested. All of that is what Vishwamitra puts in front of the king. And however, the king is afraid. So we look at these verses, and I'm going to use Griffith's translation, even though Griffith is not the best in some ways. His translation is very beautiful, not completely true to Valmiki at all times, but quite quite a beautiful translation. So here's what Vishwamitra says to the king: "Thy duty binds thee, king. Defend the suffering guest, the suppliant friend. Give me thy son, thine eldest born, whom locks like raven wings adorn." So he says that Rama can slay those demons who mar my rice and work me woe. And he guarantees that my power shall shield the youth from harm, and heavenly might shall nerve his arm. And on my champion will I shower unnumbered gifts of varied power. So he knows so much, and he is willing to share all of that with um, with the people, with Rama and Lakshmana. Nor he anticipates that the king will hesitate, nor let a father's breast give away too far to fond affection sway. But this good speech with poignant sting pierced the ear in the bosom of the king, who stabbed with pangs too sharp to bear, fell prostrate and lay sinking there. Wisely, wisely objecting, because he wants to protect his children. He says, "My son is just going to be 16. He's not fit for such an enterprise, such an enterprise." He says, "I will go. I will go in his stead. My child you must not take." So this speaks to our uh, the way that most of us deal with with the thought of our children going out into the world. It is not something that most of us are comfortable with. It's not something that most of us find we can do. And in this case, of course, there's even mortal danger.
Apologies for the technical difficulties. If Aditi ji would like to give her presentation, um, that'd be great. Um, Hi everyone. Hello. Hi everyone. So we're dealing with some technical difficulties. So we'll proceed with Aditi ji's presentation. Um, Please give a round of applause.
Namaste. Can everyone hear me? Okay, great. Very happy to be here. So I have this temple is actually very special to me. I used to live in Flushing for a number of years, just a 5-minute walk away, and I'd walk over almost every day in the evening to come for the arti. So it's very special for me to be here, and I'm grateful for the opportunity. I wanted to talk today, so I like that the event is called Anubhava. So Anubhava itself, the etymology is anu, consequence of, and bhava, which is an experience or a feeling or a state of being. And so this idea of experience is very important because nowadays, when it comes to talking about Hinduism and particularly Hindu texts, we are very overly intellectualized. So there's a lot of debate on Facebook, and any talk about the Ramayana will be about why did Sri Rama send Sita away, and was he wrong? Was he a misogynist? Is Hinduism sexist, and all of that? But that's not really the purpose of the Itihasa and the Purana. So in Hinduism, there's a long tradition of what it means to have aesthetics. So um, the framework of rasa. So we have classicists and poets and scholars who studied in depth when you have drama, when you have poetry, when you have art, what makes it the most effective. And they were very focused on rasa. So rasa in the sense of taste, that when you read a text, when you absorb it, you get something out of it. There is an experience. And that is really what the focus should be on. So if there's one message that I could send to all of you today, it's to really engage in the spirit of the poetry and the text as it's meant to be. And I think in Vishwaji's talk, you get that because the way he speaks, he brings the text alive to you. He's not teaching about it, but he's actually transmitting it, and it gets absorbed. And so what's really important is that we read these texts for ourselves. And so along those lines, in Vedanta, it is said that you can learn about fire in three ways. One is someone tells you fire burns, you listen to them and you adopt it. The second is you watch someone else, they get burned by fire, and you say, oh, by looking at their experience, I realize that this will happen to me. And then the third is you yourself touch the fire and you get burned, and then you realize, ouch, this hurts. And so the power of storytelling and why our rishis and acharyas focus so much on storytelling is because this is a way we can experience vicariously, safely, what others have gone through or may have gone through in a poet's imagination, and we learn so much from it. And there's actually studies that show that neurologically, humans are actually wired for storytelling. This is how we remember things. This is how we actually distill vast pieces of information into little bite-sized things. So for example, if we all know the story of Hanuman, when Lakshmana is dying on the battlefield and he is sent to the faraway mountains to get the Sanjeevani herb to revive him. When Hanuman goes, he doesn't bother to look for the particular herb and bring back. He lifts up the entire mountain and he brings it back. And Sri Rama praises him for this action and this viveka and this discrimination and intelligence that he's shown. In that one story or that few sentences of that, through his action, you learn so much. And then from that, we learn what are the values that we should imbibe as a bhakta, as a leader, and as a human being. So that is kind of the backdrop with which we should look at the stories of our Itihasa and the Purana and why they're so important. It's also very unfortunate that nowadays there's so much focus on Vedanta and philosophy and all of that, which is good, but it's not good when it's at the expense of thinking that the Puranas are just mythology or fairy tales or fictional stories that we should ignore, because for the vast period of Hindu history, this is how people have learned and inculcated and transmitted Hindu dharma. So I wanted to start with, there's actually a management book out there on leadership that's called Why Should Anyone Be Led by You? So in other words, if we start with this, why should anyone read the Ramayana now? Why should anyone care about Sri Rama? And I'm going to assume that you're not a bhakta, that you're not already devoted to Sri Rama. And so from a purely objective point of view, why should someone spend the time to read the Ramayana? Not just engage in social media debates, but I mean really take the time to read it. And the first question is, why do we care? So the theme of this event is on ethics. So why should we care about ethics? What does that mean? So ethics is something very different from morality. So if we have a religion or we have personal beliefs, we have a code of conduct. But ethics is something that is about your character. It's something that you deliberate over. It's something that you have to make a decision. There's a dilemma, and there's an active engagement of the consciousness. For a large part of history, Sri Rama has been considered the Maryada Purushottama, so the ultimate embodiment, the epitome of the ideal human being, the ideal king. And you may disagree or agree with that, but a large portion of humanity, perhaps the majority of humanity, not just in India, but in Southeast Asia, have considered him as such for thousands and thousands of years. And we, even if we're not particularly religious, if we're just people who are working Hindus, when you're in the workplace, nowadays especially, there's a lot of importance in ethics. So I don't know how many of you are aware, but the hottest job right now is being a prompt writer for AI. So in other words, there's so much information at our fingertips right now that if you have a question, you can figure out the answer that you need. That's not a big deal. Most of research jobs, lawyerly jobs, accounting jobs will become like obsolete. What we don't have is knowing what is the right question to ask when and how to frame it, and the softer side of judgment on when you're in a tricky situation or you have a dilemma, how do you resolve it? So for example, you have self-driving cars. If you have a self-driving car, you can program the algorithm to do anything, but you need to decide when you're the self-driving car, is your job to protect the driver's life? Is your job to protect the pedestrian? Or is their job to be utilitarian? All these kinds of things. And the Ramayana and the classics of all civilizations are time-tested stories and lessons that have come to us from our ancestors, where people have gone through universal struggles that we can all relate to. And these are heroes and heroines who have come through those situations in incredible ways that we can learn from and be inspired from. And so even if you have no particular reverence for Sri Rama, there is something of this timeless wisdom in this epic that is at least worth investigating. Another reason is that our ancestors have gone to incredible lengths to preserve and transmit these texts for us. I don't think we realize how much painstaking work it took to have on palm leaves, very frail, like literally leaves, inscribe these texts that have been preserved with such incredible integrity, that we have received them today. I actually brought with me, this is actually a modern book that ISKCON is putting together. This is just the first volume of 3 on the Balakanda. So I have about 15 volumes of this. It's just the first 3 kandas of the Ramayana. So what's in this? It is a verse by verse, if you can see, translation in Devanagari, the Roman word for word, the Roman transliteration, a word for word translation, a translation and commentary by traditional commentators. So this is something Srila Prabhupada wanted to do. He wasn't able to do in his lifetime, but his devotees are carrying this out. It is painstaking work. It's not going to be a bestseller, but this is how much Shraddha there is in the tradition for the Ramayana and why it's so important. And even if you see today, there's still so much discussion about the Ramayana. If you look at the Indian film, dramas, books, fiction, they're all based on the Ramayana, the Mahabharata, and to an extent the Puranas. So the grip that these stories have on our psyche and our civilization is immensely strong. The other part of this is that Sri Rama is very misunderstood. So actually in my own life, I have always been, Vishwaji calls himself a Mahabharata supremacist. I have been a Sri Krishna supremacist. So there was a time when I would worship Sri Rama, but I thought, he's so serious and maybe he's kind of uptight. I really like Sri Krishna. He's so mischievous. He's so loving. And I wasn't really interested in Sri Rama. And then what was interesting is I had at that time the iPod shuffle, where it would shuffle your music. And there's this Sri Rama Nama Sankirtan by the Ramakrishna Mission. It's from the Sundarkand, and it's something they sing on Ekadashi. So it's about Sri Rama, and there was something very beautiful in that music and very sattvic and soothing. And I started listening to it, and I was experiencing something of Sri Rama, and it was something very tender and beautiful. And then I started actually reading the Valmiki Ramayana, and I was shocked because it wasn't what I thought it would be. When you read the Ramayana, it's incredible to me that anyone could think that Sri Rama would abandon Sita. If you read about their time in the forest, it's very romantic. They enjoy themselves in the forest and how tenderly Sri Rama takes care of Sita. So there's actually a very famous story when they were napping in the forest, and a crow came and pecked Sita on her chest. And she is so her body is so tender and delicate. It drew blood, and she roused from sleep, and then she didn't want to disturb Sri Rama. She went back to sleep. But then when Sri Rama saw that Sita was being pecked, she wasn't injured, but she was hurt. He was so enraged that he took a blade of grass and he hurled it at the crow, and it took on the strength of the Brahmastra, because how dare anyone uh, attack his beloved. So the rest of the story goes on. But Sita actually makes a reference to this later on when Hanuman comes to visit her, and Hanuman tells her, I will take you back right now. We can leave Lanka. Your torment can end. And Sita says, how is it that the Sri Rama who took care of me to this extent has not yet rescued me? And she says that she will not leave with Hanuman. She will wait for Sri Rama to come and do his dharma. And we often talk about how Sita is tested. But in this moment, Sita actually shows an enormous amount of agency throughout the Ramayana. She herself is the one who determines she'll go to the forest with him, even though Sri Rama tries to dissuade her. And she decides that she will not go back with Hanuman because she wants to actually show the world the glory of Sri Rama and how he's a hero. And as his dharma patni, she wants him to fulfill his dharma. So imagine in that context, someone who has been suffering for so long, who is in so much torment, who is being imprisoned by this Rakshasa, the strength of will and valor that she has, that she says, no, Hanuman, you go back without me. Let my husband do his dharma. Um, and then even when Sita is missing, Sri Rama just completely falls apart when Ravana has taken her. He is desolate, he is weeping, he wants to take his life, he cannot do anything. It is actually Lakshmana who rouses him to action. So there are all these things that we miss out on when we rely on social media descriptions or watching a film or watching or reading a novel, that we miss on all this nuance and this rasa of the Ramayana. And Vishwaji spoke about the Karuna Rasa. The other thing I find when reading the Ramayana is a lot of Shanti Rasa. There's just a sense of peace that comes. And so for all of these reasons, Sri Rama is to be known and to be experienced through the Ramayana and through the reading of the text. And I also just wanted to read the first verses that Vishwaji also referred to, but this is um, when Valmiki asks Narada. So it says, the ascetic Valmiki humbly questioned Narada, who was absorbed in austerities and Vedic studies, and who was the best of the knowers of the Veda as well as the best of the sages. It says, who in this world and at this time possesses all auspicious qualities? Who is powerful, a knower of Vedic dharma, filled with gratitude, a truthful person, and firm in his vows? Who always follows Vedic customs? Who benefits all creatures? Who is learned? Who can execute anything? Who is exclusively pleasing to look at? I am desirous of hearing about this, for I am greatly curious. O great sage, you are capable of knowing such a person. And then, of course, we know the answer, and that's the beginning of the Ramayana. So for these reasons, it is worth studying in depth the Valmiki Ramayana. And then what I wanted to focus on today on this question of ethical lessons from the Ramayana is that the epics are full of extraordinary personalities from whom we can learn a lot and also be inspired. And today I wanted to focus on one small piece of the Ramayana, which relates to something known as the Panchakanya. So there's a traditional shloka that says, Ahalya, Draupadi, Kunti, Tara, and Mandodari, the five maidens remembered ever destroy the great sins. So it's become traditional that many Hindu households will recite this shloka on a daily basis. And it is in remembering these five women that great sins will be destroyed. And it's very interesting because the term for them is panchakanya. And kanya has connotations of being a maiden or a virgin or a young girl. And if you look at their stories, and we're going to touch the stories of three of them who are from the Ramayana, it's not a traditional, they're not traditional, they have not led conventional lives. They have been remarried or been with multiple men. And it is distinct from the Pancha Sati, who are Arundhati, Damayanti, Sati, Savitri, and Sita. So the Pancha Sati, so Sati itself means good and it means like a faithful wife. So these are kind of like idealized women who led very ideal lives. But the Pancha Kanya is somewhat different. And yet these are all very noble women. They're heroines, they're strong, and there's a lot for us to learn from them and then also empathize with them and what they have gone through. So I wanted to talk about that and the three of them who appear in the Ramayana. So the first is Ahalya, and all of you are probably familiar with her story. So Ahalya means someone who's flawless. She was actually created by Brahma, and she's the one meaning of her name is that she's without flaw, without deformity. And there are different stories associated with this I won't get into, but she's married off to Gautama Muni, who's a very acclaimed rishi. And they lived in his ashram, and it is said that they practiced austerities together for a long time. And as Vishwamitra is guiding Sri Rama and Lakshman after they have defeated the Rakshasas in the forest to Mithila, and they have come across this hermitage, this ashram, which looks very dilapidated and it's in decay. But then looking at it, Sri Rama can tell that at one time it must have been a very beautiful, powerful ashrama. And then so the story of Ahalya, as it is presented in the Balakanda of the Sri Ramayana, so I'm not going into the other Puranas or even what's brought in the Uttarakanda, is that they were practicing austerities in the hermitage, and one day Gautama Muni left to do his rites, and Indra came, and Indra approaches Ahalya and says, he praises her beauty and says that he wants to be with her. And there's this one line where it says Ahalya was able to see through the disguise. So Indra has come in the guise of Gautama Muni. So he's disguised himself. He's the king of the Devas. So it's obviously a very convincing disguise. But Ahalya is able to tell at once that this is not her husband and that this is actually Indra. So you can imagine what kind of spiritual powers she has, what kind of tapobala she has, that she's able to discern not only this is not her husband, but this is Indra, king of the Devas. And it is said that she agrees. So knowing that it's Indra, she agrees to be with him. And the explanation is that knowing that he was the king of the Devas. So that can be interpreted a few different ways. One is that she may have felt powerless in that instance because it was Indra and she didn't have power against him. Another could be that there was curiosity or perhaps a sense of pride, but there is also the word in there that says at that time she was under not thinking correctly. So under this influence of not thinking properly, she made this decision. And then Gautama Muni comes back and he curses Indra that his testicles will fall off, and they do. And then he tells his wife that because she has acted in ill conduct, she will remain in this ashrama invisible and undetected by all sentient beings, and she will subsist on air and she will lie on ashes. And at a certain time, Sri Rama will come, and at that moment, she will be redeemed and she will regain her form and she will come back to be with him. And so, like this, a long time passed, thousands of years pass. And it is said when Sri Rama, at Vishwamitra's instruction, enters the ashram, there's the way that Ahalya is described in that moment is very beautiful. I actually don't have the book with me right now, but she is like a bolt of lightning in clouds. So she's still not able to be seen, but because of she has done so much tapas, so there's like a radiance to her. And then when she does become visible, she's radiant like the sun on account of her spiritual penance and her austerity. And then Sri Rama and Lakshman touch her feet, and then she regains her form as soon as she becomes visible to them. And they touch her feet in reverence, and she is also recognized as this great tapaswini, and there's this radiance and beauty to her from all the austerities that she's practiced, and then she's reunited with with Gautama Muni. So that's kind of the story as it's presented in that part of the Ramayana. And there you can see the agency of Ahalya, and also this not condemnation that she was unfaithful and therefore she's to be condemned and cast away, or she cannot reunite with her husband. So the worldview there is something is very different. And Ahalya is actually worthy of reverence by Sri Rama and Lakshmana when they see her again. So that's the first story. Then the next one is Tara. So Tara can have two references. One is a story of Tara from the wife of Brihaspati, and at one time Tara is so beautiful, and she's actually taken away from Brihaspati by Chandra, and the Devas and the Asuras wage a war over her. And then eventually she is won back and taken back to Brihaspati. But in the meantime, she has a child, and it is asked who does this child belong to. For a long time, she does not answer, but then she does say it is Chandra's. So that is one example of Tara. But there's also Tara in the Ramayana itself. So Tara, the wife of Valli, and this comes in the moment when Sugriva and Valli are brothers, and they've been fighting, and Sita has been abducted. And Sri Rama is depending on Sugriva to help find Sita. And so he makes a promise to Sugriva that he will, for his sake, defeat Valli, kill Valli. And then Valli is preparing to go fight his brother. And Tara then uses very cogent words to try to persuade him not to fight his brother. So she tells him this is not proper. She uses dharmic reasoning. She says, Sri Rama is there. You won't be able to defeat him. You shouldn't do this. And Valli ignores her, and as a result, he has this battle. Sri Rama strikes him, and he passes away eventually. But what's important from this is that Tara is recognized as being courageous and intelligent and noble in the counsel that she gave to her husband, even though he ignored her. And later on, when Valli is dying, he acknowledges that Tara has always been loyal to him, intelligent, and advising him of the right things to do, even though he ignored it. And then when he passes, she is very distraught, and she's lamenting, and she's actually very strong. So when the other Vanaras are kind of fleeing the scene as Valli is dying, she reprimands them and says, "How dare you leave him?" And she is at his side, and she wants to also give up her life. And then Sri Rama tells her not to, and that she should marry Sugriva and then protect the throne for her son. And so she becomes, it says that she falls silent. So she's been crying and lamenting and crying out for so long, but at Sri Rama's words, she becomes silent, and then she accepts this. And so again, this example of Tara, who's very strong, who knows dharma, who advises her husband, who faces this tragic fate, but then she also does what needs to be done. She is remarried, and she does this for the sake of her son and for the kingdom. So this again is an example of a very strong female character who goes through a difficult time, who goes through like dilemmas, but who's also to be remembered and revered. And then the last one from the Ramayana is Mandodari, and she is the senior most queen to Ravana. And it is said when Hanuman has come to look for Sita, at one point he actually sees Mandodari, and she's so beautiful, so radiant, so noble, that for a moment he almost mistakes her for Sita. So you can imagine what kind of character Mandodari has. And the part where she comes most prominently is after Ravana has died. There's a sarga where she's just lamenting the death of her husband. And she's in that she recognizes all of his flaws and why Ravana had to be killed. And in fact, she says it is because of Sita that you are dying, because Sita herself was so noble. So she's not jealous of Sita or resentful of her, but she recognized because Sita was so noble, how could it be that Ravana would try to kidnap her and attack her and still survive? But it's also clear that she has so much love for him and loyalty to him, and she's genuinely distraught. And also that many times she tried to advise him to not take Sita, to return her, but then he didn't listen to her. And then that's kind of the end. So there is a perception around that Mandodari was later married to Vibhishana. It's not there in the Valmiki Ramayana, and I don't know if it's there in other versions of the Ramayana or where that came from. But one of her inclusion in the Panchakanya is kind of curious in that regard. So there is a Shubhashita, or a what's called like a good saying in Sanskrit that says you should never investigate the origins of a rishi, a river, or a woman. And one of the lessons that you can take from the Ramayana is that we all go through these journeys, or we go through situations that are sometimes out of our control, and we're not able to lead maybe that conventional or that perfect life of purity that we had hoped or that society expects of us. But still through that we can practice dharma, we have our values, we can still lead a dharmic life. And we should have that karuna for others who have gone through difficult situations and maybe may not have had choices, or didn't have a good choice, and still made the most of life and did what they had to for themselves, for their families, for their kingdoms, for the sake of dharma. And so this is one of those lessons we can take from that, including from the relationship of Sri Rama and Sita also. So I will stop there, but one thing I would like to say is when I was growing up, I really wanted to read the Mahabharata, and I can speak Bengali, but I can't read Bengali. I can't really read Hindi, and at that time there really wasn't much of an option if you wanted to read like the unabridged versions in English. But now there's a lot. So for the Ramayana, especially, there's the Gita Press version. You can get it in 2 volumes. It has the Devanagari and the verse-by-verse translation. In English, that's the best translation. And Bibek Debroy has done one of the critical edition of the Ramayana. And if you just go online to valmikiramayana.net, it has a verse-by-verse translation that's also very good. And then Kamala Subramanian has a condensed version that's in 1 volume. So there are many, many versions out there. It's very accessible now. And the least we can do is to read at least the Ramayana and the Mahabharata to be practicing Hindus, and not just Hindus, but to be good human beings in society, because these are things that people don't know. If you read the Ramayana, there's so many interesting lessons, there's so much nuance, and it's something we actually owe to the world. And when we're in this age of a great change, and it's a new age coming, it's something we owe to the world to bring these ideas and these values and these lessons forward. So as humans and humanists, it's really our duty to do this, and to our ancestors as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I don't know what to say, but like we learned so much just from. I know the second speaker couldn't really go, but thank you to Vishwaji and also Aditi ji. Thank you so much. We do have a couple of questions. Yeah, maybe you can come up on stage. We collected a couple of questions from, I would say, I think mostly from the youth, or was it from audience as well? We had. Okay, yeah. First, we'll actually open it up to the audience if you have any questions, and then we'll go to the questions we've collected here. So anyone in the audience have any questions, please feel free to ask now. Oh, that mic's not working. Okay. Oh, here. Okay.
Hi, I have a question for Vishwaji. Can you expound on how you think reincarnation is ethical? Because I can think of an example, like if someone was born with a congenital disease, or someone who was born with cerebral palsy or something like that, is something like that because of their past karma? And does that sound ethical at all?
Let me begin by saying that if someone is disabled or weak or disadvantaged, it is up to the entire society to help that person, right? So there is Samanya Dharma, Raja Dharma, there is just Dharma which has to be done to help them. But we may not throw away the doctrine of karma, thinking that in the function in the operation of social justice, the karma theory is an inconvenience. Okay? So having said that, who might be a great person born as disadvantaged person, right? Cannot be judged by you and me. So a person with congenital deficiencies might be a rishi who's just very quickly fulfilling his uh, prarabdha karma and is going to be attain moksha in his next life. You never know. So in the Bhagavata, there's the story of Jada Bharata. Bharata, who was fully almost enlightened, he fell in love with a deer, adopted it, and then he was born as Jada Bharata, who was like a slow person, like a mentally deficient person, and then he attained moksha. But the point I'm making is different. The point I'm making is, if you do not have the doctrine of karma, what are you going to hang your ethics on? Our conscience is not a good guide to ethics. As you can see from social media, righteousness is not a good guide either for ethics. The only other option is to have commandments. So even commandments have an out of the socio-political world transcendental hook. Without such a hook, there cannot be ethics at all. Now, to believe in a God out there who's commanding us, some people have the faith and they do it. But philosophically, inquiring minds would surely ask, is there no rational ethics? And karma is rational ethics, that we take responsibility for our actions. And we see that the effect of an action is not extinguished. If the result of an action were extinguished, it would mean that the law of cause and effect does not hold. So not only do we lose ethics, you lose science as well, because science is the study of causes. Ultimately, if you do not believe in a theory of karma and you believe that somebody's going to save you just like that, science and faith will part ways. And you'll have to come to a point where if you're a scientist, you don't have faith, and if you have faith, you don't believe in science. Now, how retarded is that situation? So that's my view. So karma theory should not be used to justify injustice or to not feel compassion or take responsibility for other people and so on. Because who knows, you might be on the receiving end in the next round. And when you are suffering from your karmas, somebody should lend you a hand. I hope that answers the question.
One thing I would add to that is there's a very misconception that if you believe in karma, you become fatalistic. So let's say the Holocaust was happening and you say, oh, that's their past karma. But the theory of karma doesn't stop there, because if you see a Holocaust happening and you don't do anything to stop it, then you're incurring the bad karma that you will suffer for. So karma is never used to justify suffering, and that because it's suffering, let it happen. We still have our purushartha, we still have our dharma to practice, and we still have the karmic consequences we will face for what we do or do not do today and in the moment.
Hello. Namaste. This question is addressed to Professor Adluri. Can you shed some light on the Rama and Vali incident relative to Dharma? How Ramayana explains that incident in a way that we understand the process correctly and not have weird ideas about that whole incident.
Besides the Sita story, the Shurpanakha story and the Bali story are the three big points on which the Ramayana is debated. Rama is searching for Sita, and Jatayu and Shabari have very clearly pointed out that the friendship with Sugriva is necessary. Vali and Shabari has already told Rama that friendship with Sugriva is necessary for Rama to go on. And it's a dharma text, and as far as I know, I'm sorry, I have not thought about this issue as much as I've thought about the Sita issue, but in my view, to my understanding, Vali has seized the kingdom from Sugriva himself. He is hardly the dharmic contact Rama could make. So from that point of view, I would see that as political alliance that was predicted by Shabari to Rama. Beyond that, do you want to add something to it?
Yes, I would just add to it that before that fight, Sri Rama has already promised Sugriva that he will kill Vali, and he has to do this in order, as Vishwaspi says, to find Sita. And then what is the karma sankat, or the dilemma there, is that Vali was fighting with Sugriva, and Sri Rama is standing at a distance, and he doesn't shoot Vali from behind, as sometimes it's mistaken, but he's standing behind some trees, and he shoots the arrow. It strikes Vali on the chest. But what Vali accuses him of is, I was fighting with Sugriva. I did not know that you shouldn't have interrupted that fight. So it's this code of conduct that Sri Rama has allegedly violated. And so Vali says, you were supposed to be this great righteous king, and how could you have taken such an unethical action when I'm engaged in a battle with another? And then Sri Rama says a few things. So after Vali says this, then Sri Rama talks. So he says, first of all of this territory is under the reign of my brother Bharata. and I have to discharge dharma under the auspices of Bharata. That is what a king is to do. You have taken the wife of Sugriva as your own, so Ruma, and that is adharma. So for that alone, I have the right to attack you. And then he says, I have made this promise to Sugriva. And then there's another part where he talks about, this is the kind of like they're in the forest, and this is kind of the way the forest and the law of the hunt and things like that operate. And at the end of that, Valli concedes that, yes, I agree now that what you have said is right. It may not be entirely satisfactory, but the point is, if you read all of the Ramayana and the Mahabharata and you never felt uncomfortable about anything, then there would have been no point to the text, right? Because you have to be made to feel uncomfortable. You have to see what a dilemma is, what a conflict is, and then learn something from that. If everything is very easy and obvious, then there's nothing for Sri Rama or Sri Krishna to teach us. So the fact that, as Vishwaji says, in all of the Ramayana, you can find maybe 2 or 3 incidents that we still contest over today. Then think what an exemplary life Sri Rama has led. And something as subtle and nuanced as violating a particular code of conduct in a fight, that we feel that so deeply, that's how great and how noble our dharma is.
So again, I would like to add one more thing. Our tradition is not dogmatic. So it is dialogical and interpretive. So dharma is, as Aditi just said, it is sukshma, it is subtle. Dharma tattvam is difficult to determine. So throughout the Mahabharata and Ramayana, you have dharma samshayas, doubts about dharma. And you have not only dharma sankata, but you also have dharma samvada. The Bhagavad Gita itself is a dharma samvada, whether to kill or not to kill Arjuna's kinsfolk. So, as Aditi said, the dilemmas are not meant for a righteous dissolution, just give a judgment and get the case off my desk. They're meant to haunt us, if I may use the word. They're meant to haunt us so we become absorbed in the text. For example, if you draw all the lines of the Vamsha in the Mahabharata, it's not really clear whether the Pandavas inherit the kingdom or the Kauravas should inherit. The legal thing is so nicely balanced and problematized, right? It would have been so easy for these texts to have just come up and Rama saying, well, I'm Vishnu, I can do whatever I want. Who are you to question me? That would have just made the text so insipid. Right? So nowhere in our text do the rishis lose sight of the difficulty of dharma. And that's what makes these texts great.
Any other? One more question from the audience? Okay. Yeah, there.
Hi, thank you to both of you for coming. This was really amazing. I have a kind of a long question, and there's a few parts to it. It's a little broader scope than the book itself, the scriptures. But something that you mentioned before, Vishwaji, was that there are other outlets for, we can say, Abrahamic faiths, for their youth to grow up reading scripture every week, and not just reading it, being taught by their gurus, being discussing the things that we're discussing now, discussing the things that might be problematized, that we can problematize. So, if Hindu youth nowadays don't really have that kind of outlet, how do you recommend young Hindu professionals who can understand, the bigger ideals in these scriptures? How do you recommend we kind of go about, learning it on our own and trying to have these discussions? I mean, this forum is great, but there's not a lot of forums like this. So that's part one of my question. And And then I know that you were talking about, Aditi that there's a lot of new translations out there, stuff that you may not have had earlier on. There's a lot of more translations. And I think that's an amazing thing that we have as people growing up in America. We have access to all of these things. You know, what can, and this is another part of this, is that we are talking about that there's a lot of social media discussions, you know, without people taking the time to actually read the scriptures. So part of that is, you know, what can Hindus in America in particular learn from having these, you can say, theological discussions. We don't really use that, but, you know. Yeah, sorry, that was a lot. That's kind of where I'll leave it. Thank you so much.
So is this working? Vishwajit's going to take the first half of the question. So on the second half, I would say, you know, I think with time, like the modalities may change, or like the form and the distribution may change, but things happen, right? So in earlier ages, how did people learn about the Ramayana and the Mahabharata? So they would hear it from their grandparents. You would have traveling like dramas and shows, and people who deliver kathas, and so you would hear about it in that way. I think one of the things we have to do a better job of is understand in this time, how do people consume media. So for example, it's surprising to me, like I listen to like audiobooks when I drive to the office. And I was like, you know, it'd be great if there was like an audiobook version of the Ramayana and the Mahabharata that I could listen to. So there are things like that where there are kind of things we can do. But I also believe once the thirst is there, then all of those forms will come. So I think if we start with what's out there and reading the texts that are available to us, then that shows that there is this market and there is this need out there, and then other things will come from that. But I also think being in the US, where we are often at the cutting edge of things, it's looking at and not shying away from newer things. Like how do you use YouTube or like podcasts or things like that to popularize and have these discussions. So even though I kind of disparage what's happening on social media, but social media is a great opportunity, right? So it may be hard to find people in Queens, like a large number of people who want to have, let's say, like a reading discussion group. But you can do it on social media, you can do it online. And so I think one of the things we have to do is be creative in adapting our content to new forums and new platforms and new modes of distribution.
Thank you, Aditi. Same here. This idea that you have to acquaint yourself with the texts and know your texts is absolutely crucial. So, for example, we have the first Hindu university in America, which has a PhD program for Hindu studies, which is nowhere else. So, for example, if I was looking at all the syllabi from most of the American universities, Columbia and what have you, all you do is take a little Sanskrit, take, I think, 4 or 5 courses, and then you write your PhD and you're considered an expert. And I think that's a little superficial. So we have something like the Hindu University of America now, where you have to take 2 years of Sanskrit, you have to take courses in a variety of subfields. You have to take it in texts and traditions. You have to take it in rituals and so on, so that you learn these things in a. There's a wonderful word in Sanskrit, vidhi vat, according to some guiding principle. and I'm very proud. Indeed, this is the proudest thing I can say about myself is I'm part of the faculty of Hindu University of America, and it's absolutely exciting. Lots of our courses are also just for continuing education, so you just take the course in which you're interested in. So new avenues and venues are opening up and to make, I think this point, in the last 200 years, Indian research had become so dominated by Western paradigms that stuff would be published in maybe 10 journals that would be in 10 university libraries, and they would not be accessible to the general public. So the reading culture was somehow kidnapped and held hostage in the universities. And at least in the case of Mahabharata studies in the West, I can tell you without blinking an eye that almost every axiom of Western interpretations of the Mahabharata are provenly false and unfounded. And if I were a professor in an Ivy League university, I would resign out of shame. So you just have to, Hindus cannot hand over that tradition and its and the custodial tradition of Hindu texts and traditions to a third party. It just won't work. And it begins by reading. Everybody should read Rajaji's, C. Rajagopalachari's translation, abridged versions of the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. That is the first thing everybody should read. Then they should read the Bhagavata Purana, at least Skanda 10, which deals with Krishna Charita. And of course, they should read the Bhagavad Gita. They should know that there are 18 chapters. What is in each chapter? They should know, and they should know some verses. And then build step by step on that. And if you think about it, Amar Chitra Katha did an outstanding job of bridging that gap when things were not ideal for the transmission of Hindu texts and traditions. Right? So something like that would be still wonderful. And literarily gifted people like Aditi Ji, she writes wonderful novels, and you can just read her Gandhari book, was amazing and gives you insights into characters. So that's my answer.
I have to say one of the most special experiences of my life was taking the Mahabharata class with Vishwaji and enjoyed, because it's amazing to be able to do a slow read of like just verse by verse and like really go into the depths of it. And I think one of the things that we have is like quantity. Like I just want to read X, Y, Z books. But it's better if you spend your whole life on one text, but really go in depth to it, because that's the beauty of the Hindu text, is that you can read any one text and get the benefit of all the other texts, because they're kind of all self-referential. And so I highly recommend that.
Yeah, if there are more questions, please do ask. We really want this to be more engaging conversation. So if there's subsequent questions, please do feel free to ask.
Another question for Vishwaji. Could you further explain what you mean by Western paradigms being provenly false with regards to interpretations of Hindu texts like the Mahabharata?
In the case of in the in the case of the Mahabharata, I can speak more eloquently. Also, mutatis mutandis, it applies also to Ramayana. The first gaffe began by not reading the texts, but trying to figure out a history of the text. And then wherever the text did not correspond to the putative history that you've imposed on the text, you would simply say that is a later interpolation. So the reading is by prima facie a violent reading. You can't call it deconstruction. You can just call it just ransacking or ravaging. Vandalizing is a better word. So here are the names of some scholars who established Mahabharata studies. Christian Larson first said that the Mahabharata war was a race battle between Aryans and Semites fighting it out in not only in India, but the white Europeans fighting against Native Americans. Then the race battle became the historic battle question in Holzmann, Adolf Holzmann Jr. and Sr. Then followed a whole host of German scholars like Hermann Oldenburg and so on. That method, which was so racially motivated and so patently false, I mean, the text doesn't even come close to anything, becomes adopted in America through Hopkins. And then people develop an ad hoc interpretation by suspicion that the text must be talking about Brahmanic domination or male patriarchy or so. And through these, the most important thing that we are supposed to get, this most important approach to the text is apparently one of critical consciousness. Such critical consciousness has led to the publication of some really crazy books out there. For example, the latest translation by Goldman, the things he says in the introductions are just, I'm reading, by the way, Goldman's a friend of mine. Everybody in academia is like, anyway, so I tell him, I said, Bob, there's a problem with it. So that's what I mean by Western.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to, I guess, ask my own personal question, if that's okay. So I know, like, to be able to really not look at this kind of a text with so much skepticism, I feel like you need to have some base faith or like belief in the teachings of these scriptures. And I think being a part of the culture has made it easier for me as a Hindu to like accept the teachings and not be too critical of it, and come with it with an understanding that it's all for a reason and it's all some lessons that we're learning, right? How do I maybe, when I'm talking about these ideas with my non-Hindu friends who don't have any background in this, and like they are possibly coming with this with so much skepticism because they have a different moral framework or different ethical framework as well. How do I maybe convince them that this is something important to consider?
Well, it's a very important question. So there are two forms of dialogue. One is respectful dialogue where the person is open, the person sees some positive things, the person see some negative things, but would like to know more. And yeah, really would like to be they are prepared to be persuaded. Persuaded. There is another kind of a dialogue, which is an interrogation and an inquisition. It begins, you have to defend everything in your text and in your culture to this person who's interrogating you. That is violent, obnoxious, and when people do that, you turn your back and walk away. But if a person can accept that their notions are persuadable and they are truly there to learn, then you may continue. But in situations where such a persuasion, Plato in his Republic begins by bringing up the word persuasion versus force. So when these discussions on Hinduism become public tribunals, there is a problem. It's not a dialogue. It's not a dialogue. Academics do it because they get paid to do it, but because they want to say that they have something new and scientific and important and that the whole Hindu tradition missed it and they will teach us that thing, which is a different thing because you cannot blame people for doing what they can to earn a penny. But when just random people on the street just draw Hinduism into an inquisition, I mean, I was asked for the recipe for curry. And I asked that person, do you cook? He said, no, I'm curious. Jadavallabhet, says Manu. Manu says, you must pretend you're an idiot and just shrug your shoulders. So in order to respond to such questions, I bleached my hair. And I just sort of swish away from the room and said, not a conversation I wish to have. But where there is Shraddha, then I can talk. I can have a conversation. So I want everybody to learn the difference between tribunal type situations versus true dialogic situations. If the person asking the question is not inquiring about it as your friend would inquire about your health, there is no need to give any response. You know, we are all free human beings. We don't have to be answerable for all the things our ancestors ever said and did. And to expect a person to be answerable is a form of racism. It's a form of abuse. It's a form of violence.
Yeah, I wanted to share a few thoughts on this also. So when we think of Shraddha, sometimes we think it means reading with blind faith or as that you're reading as without questioning. Swami Sarvapriyananda from the Ramakrishna Mission gives a really good analogy that I found helpful, which is, let's say you're in college and you're taking a class on physics. So you have a professor, you go into the class, and you say, okay, this professor, he seems to have some credentials, maybe there's something I can learn. So I go in with an open mind and I kind of suspend my doubt. I don't give up all doubts, but I suspend my doubt. But then if the student goes to class and just blindly listens to what the professor is saying, then the teacher also will not be satisfied, right? So the idea is you start, but then by the end of the class, the student should be able to learn it for himself or herself and apply that knowledge and something that was indirect that he heard, he's thought about, he's reasoned over it, and he's accepted it and it's become part of him. So that's what Shraddha really is. And so if you read a text and you never have a question or a doubt, then I don't think you've actually read it. So like the Buddhists say, with great doubt comes great enlightenment. But doubt here isn't let me go to Reddit and post 10,000 questions, let me prove how smart I am. Doubt comes from a place of sincerity, that I'm not doing this to try to outsmart Valmiki, but I actually have a sincere doubt that I'm struggling with. And then the text, it will answer, it will answer you. And Shraddha is that if I don't have the answer, but I'm going to get the answer. And that is there. Then when it comes to, so that's how we read it for ourselves. And also in Hinduism, you have the Paramahamsa, you have the swan. So the swan drinks the milk and leaves behind the water. So we also don't have to take, we're not like fundamentalists about the text that every single word is literally going to make sense to you. Sometimes there'll be things that you don't understand or you can't agree with. And maybe you say, well, maybe it's right, maybe it's not, but I don't know what to do with that, and you leave that behind. So part of it is this viveka, or this discrimination of what's to be taken and what is to be left behind. Then when it comes to your question of taking it to other people, so you mentioned people may have different moral frameworks. So everyone comes with their own frameworks or their own selves. I think one of the things that's happened to us is we've lost confidence, or we've lost, not even confidence, but just we underestimate how beautiful our traditions and our texts are. So I remember when I was writing the Curse of Gandhari, I was working with a book coach. She was American, she was white, she had no familiarity with Hinduism. And I was writing about the part of where Gandhari gives birth and the difficult pregnancy that she had. And this person said to me, this moved me so much because I had a really difficult pregnancy. And when I read about Gandhari, I was imagining, what if this woman who gave birth to 100 sons, how hard it must have been to raise 100 sons. And it was something I hadn't even thought about in that perspective. But think about it, like she doesn't know the word Shraddha, but she came to it with an open mind. And there's a universal human thing that we relate to. And our texts have that. And so you don't even have to explain it, but you just present it to people and they will themselves relate. So I like that idea, and I like how ISKCON puts it, which is you're just spreading Krishna consciousness. And I think some of it, we also shouldn't be insular or very exclusive, but if you really believe that dharma is beautiful, then there's this consciousness, there's this ethos, there's this worldview that people would benefit from. You just present it to them. Maybe they'll accept it, maybe they'll reject it. You don't have to push it. We're not evangelists. But just present it, and then if it's beneficial to someone, they'll take it. If it's not for them, it's not for them, and that's also fine.
Thank you very much. I'll ask this question quickly. One of the things that you learn as you travel throughout Asia is that the Ramayana is a very global text from the outset. Almost as soon as it is revealed in India, you find Ramayanas in Southeast Asia, all the way up to the Philippines and Japan and what have you. So I wanted you to comment on that internationalism of the Ramayana, and some of these versions from other parts of Asia aren't the same. There are many contradictions or plot twists that happen as the text migrates. How do you, as scholars and as practicing Hindus, reconcile all of that diversity of the Ramayana universe?
I don't have to. I'm not coming up with a synoptic Ramayana. There are many Ramayanas. You read them. I said there is Kamban, there is what is gained by creating a mega text. Plurality is a beautiful thing. The only thing many Ramayanas tells us is the power of the Rama story, and for different people to be able to embrace it differently. Why do I have to come up with a category Ramayana or extrapolate it or theorize on the plurality of the text? That's a pretty ridiculous thing for me to set myself up to do. Although the best job that can be done is done by someone. You can read our book. It's called Many Ramayanas, which is infinitely better than a very silly book that just came out called Many Mahabharatas, which makes no sense.
I'll say that, one of the good things about our tradition is recognizing the aspect of desha and kala, so like time and space. So when it travels to different places, it takes on different forms, and that's perfectly fine because that's what's suitable. So, right, so you have the tradition of dhyana in India and Hinduism that becomes Chan in China and Zen in Japan. And then even when Buddhism went from India to China, I think it was under the sixth patriarch, you have to adapt it to the actual, like to the people, the geography, the customs, and the culture. And so it morphs in different ways, and that's beautiful. But I think your point also brings out, how adventurous and how engaged our people were when they went to these different places. They didn't do violent conquest, but they built, like, used to have beautiful temples there. There's Angkor Wat in Cambodia, like all across Indonesia, Bali, where Hinduism is still practiced today. And so they weren't afraid to carry our traditions in a non-coercive way. And they took and they came out in different ways. And one of the things that we have to do is more outreach, I think, with these people who have similarities with us, and then also other, like native traditions or pagan traditions or non-Abrahamic traditions around the world that may not have come from Hinduism, but that we can ally with because we have certain common, principles or histories or things like that. And that's something we should learn from our ancestors who, sailed very far away, established distant kingdoms, brought our traditions, adapted them to different cultures, and did so in a very effective and successful way.
Thank you so much. We have just one final question. So we don't want to end the day without mentioning Hanuman and asking about him. So we have one question about him. Hanuman is portrayed as a devoted follower of Lord Rama, while other animal characters like Jatayu are not given the same prominence. Why?
The Lord, right? And from those few who turn to the Lord, maybe one truly comes to him. So Hanuman is unique in that way. It does not make Jatayu just fluff. Jatayu in his own way did pranatyaga for Sri Ramachandra. But Hanuman is there. See, all this is there to teach us. This is our texts are a kind of medium that shapes who we are and guides our souls. And Hanuman is the right person to teach us that kind of bhakti, just as Sita is the kind of person to teach us that grand, overarching way of not just being, as Aditi showed, not just being his wife and being supportive, but actually drawing the arc, plotting the arc of Rama's career and allowing Rama to fulfill his duties. So again, the texts are the way they are, and they are the way they are. Our task is simply to read them and profit from them.
I'd also say, I don't know that I would say that the others are not prominent. Like I would have to go back and read, but I think even with Jatayu, I think Sri Rama grieves at his passing. And then when you think after the war and Sri Rama is given a boon, he asks for all the Vanaras to be brought back to life. And then when he ascends to Vaikunta, he takes them with him. And then of course there's the story of, like the humble squirrel who's trying to do his bit to, make the bridge, and Sri Rama pets his tail. And I don't even know if that's part of the Valmiki Ramayana, but that's there in the tradition. So I think the kind of love and reverence and honor given to all of the animals is very much there, including Jatayu. But of course, Hanuman is different. It's an exalted devotee.
We cannot think of these stories as there are these people who are just people, and then they make up these stories to, I don't know, Brahmanic domination. I mean, there are all these explanations, but it is not so that a people and a tradition are a bunch of jivas that are proceeding on a certain path. Every jiva itself is a katha because it is a jivana katha, right? It has a beginning, a middle, and an end. So narratives upon narratives blend into these mighty rivers we call our texts. And of course, there are talented individuals, rishis, who can forge that into forms like the Mahabharata or the Ramayana. But nevertheless, there is no human being who is without a story. If you take away that story, it's just a mass of flesh. Right? So the extreme sensitivity to the fictional, not in the sense of just making up something, but something that is constructed, right? Think about what happens when you go to a therapist. You have to tell your life story. So this extreme consciousness of the fictional nature of existence is given ultimate form in these. So imagine asking a question of these texts: is this history or is this myth? Even history is a story, right? Otherwise, they're just discrete events in history. There's a chronology, perhaps, right? History does not include what that person ate in the morning, what he ate in the afternoon, history is already a construction. But unfortunately, history is not aware of its own fictional characters, but Itihasa Purana is aware of them. So it's a higher, it's why this appeals to the philosopher in me, it appeals to the thinker in me, it appeals to the one hungry for art and literature in me. And it is able to captivate me in a way that I can make my whole life about that story. My story becomes incorporated into that story, and that story becomes my story.
We wanted to thank the guests for coming, and also for everyone here. And we wanted to invite Shivacharya to come and close the session.
सुग्रीवमित्रं परमं पवित्रं सीताकलत्रं नवमेव गात्रं कारुण्यपात्रं शतपत्रनेत्रं श्रीरामचन्द्रं सततं नमामि. Salutations to that Lord Sri Ramachandra, who is a good friend of Sugriva, absolutely holy, consort of Sita, a storehouse of mercy and compassion. We always meditate on you and pray for your blessings. Namasabhabhyam, Namasabapadibhyascha. With the blessings of Sri Mahavallabha Ganapati and all other devatas of this temple, on behalf of the Hindu Temple Society of North America, I wish a warm and graceful evening to all the participants, guest speakers, come panelists, and everyone gathered here, as well to those who participated by virtual means, because unfortunately we could not, there was some hassle in one of the speaker who we could not do the proper connectivity, and I feel sorry on behalf of the temple. And finally, those who may keep watching the recordings of this in the live session, or even they may, I gratefully acknowledge the contributions of Akshayam and all the members and all others who helped in making this program a great success. This program, I hope, gave us an opportunity to discover that how the great epic Ramayana is still relevant in today's time and its application in enriching our daily life. It is important to refer our ancient text and its teachings as a tool for our modern management system than as a mysterious Purana or a story. We discussed several instances from Ramayana that still resonates with current time period. Being an ancient text, certain people, as people pointed out, may pick up some of the outdated instances that may be irrelevant today. But our aim was to refer to its teachings that are valid even today. I hope we are able to succeed in achieving this goal, and I appreciate its greatness from its historical, philosophical, and leadership perspective. So I would wish to quote before closing one instances, as I was personally involved in one of the Supreme Court case in India, where they were disputing about the site where Rama born, and they want to build a Rama temple in Ayodhya by demolishing a mosque. So I was involved as one of the one of the expert in finding out, which was under the leadership of Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam. When he left the presidencyship and when he first landed to Chennai, so under his guidance, we formed all technocrats in the astrological side and in the Puranic side and Vedic scholar side, like that. So I represented in the Agamic side, Veda Agama side. So we all formed a team, and we gathered in the Gindi Engineering College and Anna University in Chennai. And then we have been discussing for 3 long days. I was personally involved in finding out, did Rama born? Is Ayodhya is a place where Rama really born? Because the Supreme Court asked us. They asked us, is there a proof apart from what is said in Ramayana? But again, did Ramayana really says Rama born in Ayodhya, or where is it the site? Can you come up with evidences in, because we talked about even about today's thing. So it includes even people, of course, last 3-4 days we've been watching about Chandrayan's launching in moon. So we had representation from ISRO scientists too in this team. There were about 40 plus people who were there, and 3 long days we discussed about why we discussed about, we were trying to link the Ramayanas, whether it is relevant today. So we were trying to find out, yes, this is the day Rama born, and also in different way of analyzing things. Okay, we analyzed Ramayana in that way. Okay, what is a likely taking? Of course, when people were, I think one person was asking about, there were several Ramayanas, several versions, several commentaries, and several interpretations, several perseverances of Ramayana. So we decided to refer only to Valmiki Ramayana, which we felt that is the source, or that is the original Ramayana. So that is where we took it up in different angles. So I was physically I was be there as part of the team. So we were able to justify, yes, this Ramayana is real. Whether even there was a even discussion about whether the Ram Setu was real, or this is real, Rama born real, and we took up various instances with respect to the planet position, whether really Rama born here, and all those things. So what I'm trying to say is there is always a scope. If you always refer to the source text, we can, okay, if you want to look at the epic as a story, or as a Purana, or as a legend, or in a philosophical way, or as a astronomical way, yes, you can keep deriving. So it's a very valid text, and no need to think whether it is just myth or story. We can derive information from, that's what required. What we require to infer from this Ramayana is more important than trying to dispute whether such things happened or not. That's not the real thing. Okay, there could be certain instances which would have been referred there, which may or may not be relevant in today's world, but it may again after some time. It's all cycle, recycling. So today what is not relevant, after some time we may find it relevant. It was relevant in some period of time, like that. Okay, sorry. So there is definite scope for such kind of programs like this. Today we discussed about Ramayana. Maybe we can even discuss about other things in future programs. Once again, I thank one and all present here, and also to the virtual viewers. Thank you all for taking time in coming and being with us, and I hope all of you enjoyed. And I once again feel sorry for one of the panel member who was not able to and we actually missed him. We were not able to hear his presentation. We feel once again sorry for him, and please communicate to him that we felt very sorry for whatever happened. So thank you very much once again from the Hindu temple. Bye.
I want to give a quick shout out to all the volunteers who are present and who are not present. I know this event, it took a long time to come up with this event. We've been working on this event before Ram Navami this year. So it was a long process to get to where we are. But so thank you everyone for participating. Thank you so much.